the East End's for lull into a false sense of security. Oh, thank God, he's gone, he's disappeared, or whatever. Maybe he has. There was one little blip in that 6-week period, and it came in the form of a letter and a package that was sent with it. Both were sent to a man called George Lusk. Now, George Lusk was organising vigilante groups of locals to patrol around the streets because they thought the police were absolutely useless. And they're absolutely right. Now, the letter that came to the package said this: from hell, which is never a good way to start a letter, is it? I sent you half the kidney I took from one woman, preserved it for you. The other piece I fried and ate. It was very nice. I may send you the bloody knife that took it out. If only you wait a while longer, catch me when you can, Mr. Lusk. Now, George Lusk, he did the right thing. He gave that package to the police. He said, you better open it, which they did. Now, but they found it sounds contended amongst the ripologists. 50% say it was a real piece of human kidney and seemed to match the remaining kidney left in Catherine Eddowes' body. The other half, they said it was a hoax, it was a joke, it was sent by a medical student, or whatever. Forget all about it. Now, if you believe the former, this makes this letter one of the most real ones that we have. But notice it wasn't signed Jack the Ripper, which is rather interesting. Now, the morning after the actual murder itself, on the Friday morning, there was a man called John McCarthy. John McCarthy was landlord of number 13 Miller's Court. He decided to get some back rent that Mary Kelly owed him. So he sent his gopher. He said, go on, number 13 Miller's Court. That Mary Kelly woman, she owes me 29 shillings, go and get it off her. The old boy went round the corner, bashed on the door. Come on, Mary, open up, darling, you have some money, love. Never mind. Went round the side of the building, so I tried to peer through the filthy window. Couldn't see through. But he noticed there was a pane of glass that had been smashed, stuffed with a bit of old rag. He pushed through the bit of old rag, parted a bit of filthy muslin curtain, looked across the room to the bed. What he saw so shocked him, he immediately ran back to John McCarthy, and the alarm was raised. Now, one of the first on the scene of the crime was a man called Inspector Aberline, who was in charge of the case himself from Scotland Yard. He realised the front door of 13 was actually locked by a front door key they couldn't actually find. They were forced to break it down with an old pickaxe handle. It finally gave way, burst open and bashed against a little side table next to the bed. A young policeman was told, don't look, and he said he did, and the image stayed with him for the rest of his life. This is the worst of the 5 murders. They got progressively worse they went along. In this particular case, he'd taken his time over the killing, possibly done it by firelight, certainly some kind of manic frenzy. When the first 2 policemen went into the room, one of them slid on the floor because the blood and gore was caked onto it. They looked over to the bed, and there was the body, naked except for a chemise that had been thrust under her armpits. She'd been laid open and disemboweled with the other girl's hand. Her uterus was missing. This time her heart was missing. He cut off her breasts, and along with a couple of vital organs, also her nose, placed it in a heap next to her head. He tried to hack the head off, and he hadn't quite succeeded. It was just hanging from the skin at the back of the neck. He then so mutilated her face, she couldn't be recognised. He then drew out her intestines, and along with flesh that he stripped from her thighs down to her feet, exposing the thigh bones themselves, flung with this around the room. Some of it was hanging from the picture rail above her, some of it he banged into the wall himself. And for his last demonic act, he took a hand and plunged it into the gaping stomach. That's when they found the body of his rhythm. Now, the police did something rather quirky on that Friday morning. They took a photo of the unharmed eyes of Mary Kelly in the hope they could capture on film the last image she'd seen before she died. It doesn't work. Should I start with the No. Now, what were the whereabouts of Mary Kelly the night before? Well, at 1 o'clock she was heard singing in 13 Miller's Court with a client of hers. A while later, around the time of the murders themselves, a couple of women were woken up to these words. "Oh, murder," they heard. Unfortunately, the words unknown in the East End at the time would cause much of a fuss, and they simply turned over and went back to sleep again. There was a man called Mr. Hutchinson who stepped forward after the initial inquiry, and he said this. He said, "I saw Mary Kelly about 2 in the morning. In fact, I was hanging around by the lamppost next to the Queen's Head pub, and she came up to me. She said, 'Mr. Hutchinson, let me 16 Sunday night.' So I said, 'Well, a lot of work you've done if I've money for it. Then if I spend all my money down the road for market.' She said, 'Well, I've got to find some money from somewhere, Mr. Hutchinson,' and wandered off. Well, then she was tapped on the shoulder by this really posh geezer, which I noticed it. In fact, I hung around by the lamppost, waited for the couple past me, so I could get a good look at this geezer's face. Unfortunately, he covered over his face with his hat, but I noticed he's wearing a dark moustache, slightly turned up at the edges, a thick gold watch chain, all shoe-shaped tie pin, and an Astral Can sort of trim coat. He was describing a middle-class kind of person. He then followed them back to 13 Miller's, leaned on the other side of Dorset Street, watched 13 Miller's for about 35-45 minutes, didn't see anyone come back out, he got fed up and left. Now, that's as far as the witnesses in this case are concerned. Rather interesting, of course, when he was hanging around, that was roughly the time some sort of actually plot when the killing took place. In other words, what I'm saying is this may be actually called an actual glimpse of the killer himself. But there's a counter-argument to this as well, and that is that Mr. Hutchinson himself was Jack the Ripper. Now, in other words, he has some good sort of, there was good reasons, in one sense, circumstantially, because he was a local man. He obviously knew a few of the girls, and all that kind of stuff. And so, in other words, he could escape quite easily through those alleyways and all that. So the theory goes, in other words, that Mr. Hutchins waited until the initial inquiry before coming forward with a totally different description, totally other than him, in other words, to get people off the scent, if anyone had actually seen him hang around with them. Now, there are a couple of mysteries as well. If you remember, Inspector Abeline had to break through the locked door of 13 Willis Court. They didn't know where that front door key was. Now, when he was interviewing Joe Barnes, he said this. He said, I was in loads of rows with Mary. She used to invite prostitute friends back to 13 Millers if they had nowhere else to go. I was getting fed up with that when I left down my lodgings at the moment. But I remember during one of those rows we had, we smashed that pane of glass in the window. It was handy though. It meant that me and Mary could slip our hands through to undo the latch on the inside of the front door, because we lost the front door key, see? Now, he apparently lost that front door key 10 days before the actual murder itself. And it was locked by that very key when the police broke in. Who had that key then in those 10 days? Was it Jack the Ripper? If it was Jack the Ripper, did he know Joe Barnett? Did he know Mary Kelly? Did he know the other victims who seemed to follow up very So maybe they did know the assailant. Mystery number 2. When Abeline was searching around the warm ashes in the grate, he found some remnants of women's clothing on a woman's bonnet, but they weren't Mary Kelly's. Mystery number 3, weirdest of all. Who is to be seen coming out of Miller's Court Friday morning after the murder itself, but none other than Mary Kelly herself? She was seen by a woman on the other side of the road called Mrs. Maxwell, who swore to me. She said, oh yeah, if I'd struck up a conversation with her. She said, hey Mary, you don't look too good. You want to go down the pub and have a pint? She said, no, just been down the pub and have a pint. You're right, I wasn't feeling very well. Which is why I brought it all up again. And she pointed down at the gutter where she's thrown up. Now, Mrs. Maxwell reckons saw her half an hour later in a pub. This led to a theory. It goes like this. But Mary Kelly didn't find a client at 3 in the morning. She went back to 13 Millers. Unbeknown to her, a prostitute friend of hers had let herself in and become that victim who was on the bed. In other words, Mary Kelly opens the door, sees the victim on the bed, she goes, oh, murder! Which is what those women remember. And she says, oh, it's a perfect alibi. Everyone thinks it's me on the bed. I can start my life all over again. When she don't make much sense, she was seen the following morning saying, oh, Mrs. Maxwell, I'm starting my life all over again, but don't tell anyone. There's another theory, it's called the Jill the Ripper theory. It wasn't Jack, it was Jill. It was a woman that did these crimes. And when she got to Mary Kelly, she did her in and swapped clothes with her. Her own clothes she burned in the grate, which is what those remnants were. And then she donned Mary Kelly's clothes, and that's who Mrs. Maxwell did see the following morning. Seems to make weird kind of sense. Actually, a lot of rubbish. They found Mary Kelly's own clothes, neatly folded by the bed after the police broke in. And as far as the remnants in the grate are concerned, maybe that's not such a mystery either. A friend of Mary's used to bring a washing around to be done, and it was probably that that fueled the fire. But there's still the mystery about why after those keys and that key in those 10 days, and that strange sighting of Mrs. Maxwell's the following morning. Weird, wacky, but absolutely true. And now one else is absolutely true. We're going to our final destination. And in doing so, we should be passing a couple of ripperish kind of sights. In other words, we're going down the alleyway there, and you'll notice down the bottom there is Artillery Passage, which is chock-a-block full of 18th century buildings. We're then going on to roughly where Mary Kelly was actually murdered, which we police know is a multi-storey car park. It doesn't get more exciting than that. So we're going down that lit alleyway there, straight down the end and turning left, please. Thank you.